Hi guys, it's Danny. Alrighty, today we will be discussing about the proper use of cinnamon powder with orchids. Now this is a household product that is really useful. In some cases, many of us use it with our orchids, but there is a bit of concern about how to properly use it. Use it correctly and it can save you from a lot of trouble, but use it incorrectly and it's disastrous. So let's talk about its properties first and then how to properly use it. Now, first of all, the cinnamon powder that we use is the one you find in the supermarkets. You don't want the sticks, you actually want the powder. It's nothing special about it, it's just your usual cinnamon that you use in your cookies and you usually find in supermarkets. Now, some people say that cinnamon has natural antifungal and antibacterial properties. To be quite honest, I am not sure if this is true because this particular cinnamon is treated in a way for it to be good for human consumption, and also I cannot test these properties. However, the main reason we use cinnamon is that it's a wonderful drying agent. It practically dehydrates. So the main usage for cinnamon is to actually dry tissue when we want a certain tissue of the orchid to be dried. Now the logic behind this is that the more humid an environment is, the bigger the bacterial and fungal activity is. And in most cases we don't really want that. So cinnamon is really used whenever we have to deal with sealing a cut wound. Now, sometimes we are forced to cut the leaves of an orchid due to various reasons. Whether it's unsightly or it has an infection spreading and we want to stop it, we usually cut the affected portion. But sometimes this cut portion can get infected. It depends on environment and other factors. But in some cases, if the wound doesn't naturally seal itself in time, it can get reinfected and actually continue and decimate the whole leaf. Now, this particular orchid I'm showing you right now had a cut wound that got reinfected and I had to cut it again and seal it with cinnamon. I did film this process and you can find it somewhere on the screen right now. If you click on it, you will see the video with the whole process. And now, after a few months from applying the cinnamon, as you can see, there is no further reinfection and actually the leaf sealed itself really nice. So the first use of cinnamon powder is to sterilize cut wounds on leaves of the orchid. The leaves are not the only organ of the orchid that we can sterilize with cinnamon. Sometimes we can have the bad luck of having a rotting pseudobulb. This is the case for this orchid. I really had to cut away a pseudobulb from this orchid because it was really mushy and rotten. And I was left with a big cut wound right here that really needed sealing because it was just so big that it had a high chance to reinfect itself. A month later, as you can see, the wound is properly sealed, there is no reinfection. Actually, the part of the pseudobulb that was left has gotten pretty dehydrated and dry. This is what I wanted. I did film the process on how I removed the pseudobulb and sterilized with cinnamon, so you have it on the screen right now. If you click on it, you can see that video. Anyway, you can find the links towards the videos that I mentioned in the description below if you cannot click the annotations on the screen. So another use for cinnamon is to sterilize the wounds created by removing pseudobulbs or breaking the rhizome and stuff like that that leave behind an open wound which is pretty big and pretty prone to getting reinfected. Cinnamon powder can also be used in the cases of crown rot or stem rot, and I'll tell you how this actually works. Now, as you can see, the leaf has a membrane that protects the soft and moist tissue underneath. This is why if you apply cinnamon on a leaf, most probably nothing will happen, in most cases, let's say, and also this is why the leaf does not rot all the time. It is protected by this membrane. The membrane keeps the surface of the leaf dry. Now, in the cases of crown rot or stem rot, this membrane is disrupted, and this is why the infection, the fungal infection, starts to seep into the leaf, the moist tissue on the leaf, and actually spreads. Being that the fungus destroys this membrane, the cinnamon can actually work on it. And I do have a video, I will post it somewhere here that you can click and watch how I actually managed to save an orchid from crown rot. So if you apply cinnamon directly in the crown that is rotten or in between the leaves on the stem on the affected portion, the cinnamon will act as a drying agent once again, and it will limit the further reinfection of the tissue because fungi really do better in moist conditions. In dry conditions, they cannot survive. So because the membrane of the leaf is disrupted by the fungal infection, the cinnamon can actually seep in and dehydrate the tissue, making the fungal's life really hard. Now, when you treat an orchid for crown rot or stem rot, you do need to be careful that the cinnamon stays on the affected portion and it does not go on the roots. If it goes a little bit on the leaf, in non-affected tissue, that's pretty much okay because of the membrane, but just be careful that you don't make the cinnamon fall on the roots because the roots do not have this protective membrane. Cinnamon can also be used on cut wounds on the flower spikes. Usually orchids will dry their flower spikes on their own, but sometimes, especially in the case of Phalaenopsis orchids, they will stay pretty much green, and if you wish to cut that flower spike, you will leave behind an open wound. You can apply a little bit of cinnamon just on the wound and it will seal off and you will not have a reinfection of the orchid through the flower spike. So another good use for cinnamon powder is to apply it on the flower spikes that you just cut from your orchid. Of course, if the flower spike that you cut was already dry, there's really no need for cinnamon. Only use cinnamon on live tissue and moist tissue. So as a general idea, cinnamon powder is used when you want to dry a certain tissue of the orchid in order to sterilize it and not promote further reinfection of the tissue. However, I would never use cinnamon powder on roots because think about it, if it dehydrates and the purpose of a root is to absorb water, you can imagine that the root will be damaged. So people have been asking me if it's okay to apply cinnamon on a root that has just been cut, and I would have to say no, it is not a good idea. It might sterilize the cut wound you just made, but with watering, cinnamon powder will spread throughout the pot, and this can potentially damage the other roots that are healthy. As I was saying, cinnamon dehydrates, so only use cinnamon in places where it will stay put and not spread to other organs. Now, I had the chance to observe the full potential of cinnamon as a drying agent by mistake, and I'll add the link towards that video somewhere on the screen so you can see what happened. Practically, I had a ribbon that was soaked in water and cinnamon, and some substance from the cinnamon remained on that ribbon, and I actually tied a flower spike with that ribbon. In one day, it created such a dehydration point on the spike that the spike was compromised. So I really would not play around with cinnamon. Use it exactly where you need it and try to not spread it to organs that you do not want to dehydrate. So like with all good things, if you don't use it properly, you can have quite a few catastrophes. But use it properly and actually it will save you from a lot of headaches. So I hope this video was useful to you and it gave you some answers. If you liked this video, then give it a thumbs up and share it with your orchid friends that might benefit from knowing how to use cinnamon. Also, if you'd like to see more tutorials and orchid videos from me, just subscribe to my channel. I post on a daily basis. Also, feel free to leave me questions and suggestions for videos in the comment section below and I'll get back to you. If you click on the left side of your screen, you'll be directed to orchidnature.com, where you'll find care sheets, identification sheets, and also talk to us in the forum section. And if you click on the right side of your screen, you can watch a Vanda orchid video. I'll see you next time. Thank you for joining. Bye!